Hi, I'm Dan Kubisky with the Society of Professional Journalists International Community. Stars and Stripes has a long history of accurately and fairly reporting news that was important to the armed forces of the United States and their families. The newspaper was started 165 years ago at the beginning of the Civil War after Union troops discovered an unused printing press in Bloomfield, Missouri. Some of the Union soldiers were printers and asked their commanding officer if they could begin publishing a newspaper for the soldiers. The publication came and went over the years, and finally in 1942, General Dwight D. Eisenhower established the current version of Stars and Stripes as a morale booster for the American troops in World War II. And it has served the American military and their families ever since. While the U.S. Defense Department owns it, the publication also has editorial independence until now. The first Trump administration tried to zero out the budget of Stars and Stripes. Complaints from soldiers and press freedom advocates stopped that action. And the SPJ was part of that coalition that fought to protect the publication. You can see some interviews with Stars and Stripes editors and ombudsmen from that time at our YouTube channel. This term, the administration has taken steps to remove the independence of Stars and Stripes. Two Pulitzer Prize-winning journalists on the Stars and Stripes Advisory Board, Susan Dardarian, a former editor of the Minnesota Star Tribune, and William Church, executive editor of the Santa Fe New Mexican, filed a lawsuit this week in federal court that the policies imposed on the paper are censorship and illegal. Among the actions taken by the administration was the removal of comics and most stories related to the families of military personnel. The Pentagon also fired the ombudsman, Jacqueline Smith, for speaking out about these actions. That ombudsman, Jacqueline Smith, is with me now. Thank you much for being here, Jacqueline.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate your interest.
Well, I apologize for the long-winded introduction, but for most people who are not in the military, their knowledge of Stars and Stripes begins and ends with the title of the publication. So I had to give a little bit of background. Of everything I said before, was there anything that was wrong that needs to be corrected, or did I kind of hit some of the high points that correctly?
Oh, very accurately. You hit all the high points. And of course, it's going to take a while because Stripes has such a long history that it takes a while to explain it. And also, it's set up as a rather unusual that it's, within the DoD, but not shouldn't be controlled by the DoD. So it takes a lot of explaining. You got it all right.
Thank you very much. I try to do my homework. We have many veterans who are active in the SPJ international community. And when I posted the first set of modernization proposals put forth by the Pentagon civilian leadership, I was flooded with emails asking what we could do to help the newspaper. But before I get to what can be done to help protect the journalists there and the independence of the publication, could you just give us a brief overview of what the Secretary of Defense is trying to do to the publication and what led to your firing?
Okay, well, I will give you the longer version so that it's complete, but it goes back to January 15th. And at that point, Sean Parnell, who is the assistant to the Secretary of Defense for Public Affairs, put something on X saying that he wanted to refocus the paper, focus more on lethality, get away from gossip, which was odd because there's never gossip in there. And so that was very, very alarming. But nobody really knew what it meant because there was no further direction, no amplification, nothing from that. However, putting it in the bigger context, we have seen that the Pentagon systematically has been restricting the media, access at the Pentagon, asking for like a loyalty pledge. It's been nonstop. And in fact, the New York Times, as you know, has sued about it. So at Stripes, management and reporters were kind of waiting and wondering and hoping against all odds that that kind of attitude and approach would not affect Stars and Stripes, but as of January, it did. So, um, so a lot of stories were written about it, and I began writing more columns. As ombudsman, I would occasionally write a column as issues came up. For example, talking about core values, or talking about how Stripes reporters covered the Vietnam War, issues that were of interest to me, and I thought readers should know about. But after January 15th, I stepped it up and began writing more columns, explaining to the public what was going on and what the consequences would be. Um, so then we get to March 9th, and tell me if this is going on too long or too much detail.
No, you're fine. Believe
Okay,
me, I'll cut you off if it gets too long and too into the
okay,
weeds.
okay. That's good because when you're very involved in something, you kind of go off on it. So March 9th, there was a memo from the Deputy Secretary of Defense. His name is Steve Feinberg. And he issued an interim policy for the operation of stripes, with the order that it would become, they would work with Parnell to come up with a permanent policy, but here's how it should go. And that was spelling out then really what Parnell was talking about in his ex post. Um, Clearly eroding the editorial independence of Stars and Stripes. For one, it prohibited, and that is the exact word used, prohibited them from using syndicated material, Associated Press, Bloomberg News, material that enhances some of the coverage because Stripes doesn't have enough reporters to be everywhere covering everything. So naturally, some wire service, it gets incorporated, but also items of interest to the readers, um, feature stories, the comics, and so forth. So I brought that to the attention of of the public, and of course they subscribers could see it because one of the things that Stripes management had to do, they had no choice but to begin to comply with this new policy. So one of the ways of complying by not using syndicated material, they had to withdraw the Sunday comics. 8 pages of color comics. That's going to get noticed. And no reader, of course, liked that or thought it was a good idea to do that. So I wrote a column about it, and you know how it is with journalism and a lead. So I said that Pete Hegseth doesn't want you to read the Sunday color comics and Stars and Stripes. He's the head, everything buck stops there.
Right.
Well, it does go up to the White House, but anyway, um, that was not my last column, but I believe that maybe that was a reason that they didn't like what I was doing. I don't know for sure because for me, I never had any word from any of them at the Pentagon. Like, we don't like the approach you're taking. Let's talk about it, or no reprimand. Nothing, nothing. So, just
Wow.
left to try to figure out what happened with the firing. Um, so there's that. The ombudsman position should be independent, not just from the newspaper, as you would expect with a traditional ombudsman, because you have to be
Mhm.
critical, but also not responding to the Pentagon. That position reports to Congress, to the House and Senate Armed Services Committee specifically. They set it up, and they expect annual reports at least. First things come up, meet with them more often. So,
If I could just stop you right there, you have to
yeah.
report, as ombudsman, you had to report to Congress. Your position is congressionally mandated. And face it, as is the editorial independence of Stars and Stripes. Uh, has
Right.
there been any pushback from Congress over your firing, over the modernizations that have been made to Stars and Stripes that you've seen?
Yeah, both House and Senate Armed Services Committee members have been, Democrats primarily, have been strong about it. On the Senate side, so Senator Blumenthal, Senator Warren, Senator Shaheen all wrote a letter, and others co-sign it to Deputy Defense Secretary Feinberg, asking questions about, you know, how are you going to implement this? How are you going to ensure Stars and Stripes stays editorial independent, so forth and so on. The House, Jamie Raskin did the same. His letter went to Hegseth and asking questions, which the way things work, just asking questions is, drawing a line there saying, we're watching, we're concerned, don't overstep it. Has it resulted in a bill or that sort of action? Not yet. However, they are trying to attach amendments to the National Defense Authorization Act, which is now being going through the process to legally protect Stars and Stripes. So they're acting on it. They're working on it. They there's quite a lot of support for Stars and Stripes. As far as my position, I think if the position had been eliminated altogether, they would have taken some action, but it's the person being removed from the position. So, what can they do about it? Because just like Stars and Stripes is part of DOD, I also was a DOD employee. I had clearance, I had that common access card. So the payroll came through the Army, actually. Uh, so, one of those hybrid things.
Okay. Okay.
But there's been a lot of support.
And there was a lot of pushback from Congress during the Trump first term as well, when they tried to zero out Stars and Stripes. I mean, the uproar was gigantic, as I recall. I mean, there was just no doubt that that was a bad move. So it seems they've made a more subtle effort of trying to control it as opposed to eliminate it.
That's right. That's exactly right. And curiously enough, so back in 2020, when it was Mark Esper, the defense secretary, who tried to zero out the budget, um, there was like an 8-month process. So they had Stripes and the ombudsman then did have quite a lot of time to lobby with Congress and make a case. And they did get a lot of public support. In the end, in that September of 2020, it was President Trump himself who said, you can't do that. You got to fully fund Stars and Stripes. It would have been nice in this administration if the White House had done something similar to stand up for the newspaper. But that has not been seen yet. That has not happened. That is not expected to happen.
Well, you had briefly mentioned the issue in the Pentagon of news organizations having access as they used to have to cover the Pentagon,
Mhm.
and even now the press room is declared a secure space, uh, a classified space. Um, is this just Do you just see this action against Stars and Stripes kind of in line with their efforts to control the story the way the political leadership wants the story to go, as opposed to allowing for a fair and open discussion of the issues?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's all part of the pattern. The way Stars and Stripes is being treated is part of their trying to clamp down on the media and the media access to authorities and to publishing, yeah, the news, the truth.
Okay.
hmm In
Um,
fact, for Stars and Stripes, one of the areas I objected to is that they want more news from public affairs, that is, the military public affairs
mhm.
in the newspaper. Now, press releases and so forth, that can go in there, but not like news and not replacing news with that. So that's another way that they're trying to control the messaging.
Well, we're seeing a very similar situation with the remnants of Voice of America as
Mhm.
well, where it's the White House press releases that are being broadcast as news so often. Um, and they made the same kind of attacks there on editorial independence. I mentioned earlier there is this lawsuit that was just filed a day or two ago. That's one step in the actions of somebody to try to protect Stars and Stripes. Is there a way that groups such as the Society of Professional Journalists, Committee to Protect Journalists, all the other journalism groups, press freedom organizations, or even individual journalists, is there anything that we can do to provide support to the journalists within Stars and Stripes who are forced to work under these new regulations, but also to try to help protect Stars and Stripes and bring it back to its old glory of editorial independence and fair and honest reporting?
I think the statements that have been coming from the organizations are extremely helpful. They're helpful in several ways. One is sends the message to the Pentagon that yes, people are watching, people care about this. You think you're getting away with it, but we're following this. Also sends a message to the staff because you're so right. People who are all the journalists there who are trying to report the news. And I mean, and some of them are even putting themselves at risk. There's a reporter in Bahrain right now, and getting bombed there. Um, so for them to know that they're not alone, that there are press freedom groups out there who are supporting them, who want to help, who appreciate what they're doing, I think is extremely meaningful.
Okay, well, we're gonna keep an eye on this and keep pushing the issue as much as we can. Um, Getting a little busy though between supporting Voice of America, Stars and Stripes, and protecting our own access to government offices. Listen, I promise to keep this
Yeah.
short, and it's clear we could do a much longer session, and I hope that we might be able to call on you in the future to do another session on this as well. But do you have any last words that you'd like to add, that something of importance that maybe I didn't ask you or that didn't come up in our conversation?
Well, we did cover a lot of ground, Dan, and you're asking good questions. I would say individually, if people who support freedom of the press would like to do something, write to their representatives, to their senators, and ask them to take legal action to support the editorial independence of Stars and Stripes, especially if they have anyone in their area who's on the Armed Services Committee, because that's where it would begin. Um, let them know that the public cares, and so that'd be appreciated. Um, Keep following the news, coming out with so the organization's coming out with statements that goes a long way. That's very helpful. I think we have to support each other. We all have to care about protecting the First Amendment. If people don't speak up, that right is just going to get eroded and eroded and eroded. Can't let that happen.
Earlier today, I was talking with a journalist from BBC, and she used the term global solidarity amongst journalists. And I think this is exactly what you're saying as well, that we need to show as much solidarity as possible for to help our colleagues.
Exactly. I like that phrase. I might use that.
Feel free to take it. So,
Spread it around.
Jacqueline Smith, former ombudsman for Stars and Stripes. It was a pleasure talking with you. I do hope that we can have you on again, maybe in a longer session, maybe with an audience. You can get some questions from our very irate veterans who are in our committee here at the Society of Professional Journalists. I want to thank you very much for taking time and explaining this very important issue to us.
Thank you for your interest, Dan, and I'd be happy to come back anytime. Thank you.
Great.